KJA Global Channel. The Political System and Me. Series 5. Myanmar's Democratic and Federal Transition. Episode 54. Myanmar's System Change Revolution. Why the System Must Be Rebuilt. There are moments in a nation's life when the mask breaks. When speeches no longer persuade. When flags no longer hypnotize. When the carefully constructed picture of order collapses under the weight of what people have always known in their bones. Myanmar has lived through many masks. Masks of stability. Masks of discipline. Masks of national unity. Masks of development. Masks of patriotism. But behind those masks stood a political system that was not designed primarily to serve citizens. It was designed to preserve concentrated power. That awakening is what we mean by the system change revolution. Not because people suddenly became political for entertainment. Not because ordinary citizens desired chaos. But because ordinary life became impossible under an architecture that repeatedly produced fear, corruption, poverty, humiliation, exclusion, and violence. This is where our question begins. Is Myanmar's struggle only about replacing rulers, or is it about rebuilding the system that determines how power, force, rights, money, institutions, and accountability operate? The viewer encounters this first not as theory but as a condition of life. A family displaced, a child without school, a patient without medicine, a worker without security, a community governed by fear. A citizen who cannot ask who decided under what law and with what right. This episode is not an announcement of hatred. It is a declaration of clarity. Myanmar's revolution is not only about removing individuals. It is about dismantling a governing machine that has repeatedly proven unable to produce equal dignity, accountable authority, lawful civilian rule, or durable peace. If the machine remains, the outcome returns. New faces. Old rot. New promises. Old terror. New slogans. The same blood. A nation cannot heal inside the same structure that wounded it. You do not repair a collapsing bridge by repainting it. You rebuild the bridge. Many nations have removed leaders. Far fewer have transformed systems. The system reveal is regime replacement versus system reconstruction. Regime change replaces office holders. System change rebuilds the rules, institutions, incentives, safeguards, and authority relationships that determine public life. In plain language, regime change replaces faces. System change rebuilds structure. Only the second can prevent repetition. The core disease is power without accountability. In Myanmar, that disease has often been reinforced through military political fusion, armed command penetrating political authority, constitutional design, administration, economic privilege, security institutions, and public life. The structural awakening is this. This is not merely a temporary crisis. It is a system problem. A system can be built to produce bad outcomes regardless of who occupies the chair. A system built on unaccountable force rewards those willing to use unaccountable force. A system built on secrecy nurtures corruption. A system built on centralized domination reproduces oppression. A system built on fear teaches citizens to survive rather than participate. No future can be safe unless the system itself becomes different. A system must be judged by its outputs, not by its claims. Not by its ceremonies, not by its propaganda, but by what it produces repeatedly in ordinary human life. Does it produce security or fear? Public service or extraction? Equal dignity or hierarchy? Law or arbitrary command? Truth or enforced illusion? Correction or impunity? Accountability is the moral limit on power. Where accountability disappears, cruelty becomes easier. Myanmar's system change struggle therefore carries several connected national tasks. First, dismantle dictatorship. end coercive and unaccountable rule, and remove the institutional privileges that allow armed power to dominate civilian political life. Second, protect civilians. Any transition that ignores civilian survival, humanitarian access, displacement, detention, trauma, and local protection is not a democratic transition in human terms. Third, rebuild legitimate public authority. Authority must arise through lawful, inclusive, reviewable arrangements rather than command, secrecy, or self-appointment. Fourth, reconstruct institutions. Courts, public administration, police, public finance, education, health, local government, and security institutions must be redesigned to serve the public rather than preserve domination. Fifth, establish a federal democratic constitutional settlement. The settlement must recognize shared sovereignty, equal citizenship, ethnic nationality rights, regional self-government, minority protection, civilian supremacy, and enforceable limits on power. Sixth, create durable democratic transfer. No transitional authority should become permanent merely because it helped defeat the old order. Power must remain temporary, answerable, and transferable through legitimate democratic processes. A revolution that does not rebuild systems leaves space for the old system to return under a new mask. That is why system change is not a slogan. It is a design requirement. To understand Myanmar's system change revolution, follow the transition chain. Authoritarian breakdown or collapse. Immediate civilian protection. Interim authority. Institutional reconstruction. Constitutional settlement. Democratic participation. Durable order. Each arrow asks a different accountability question. Who authorized the decision? Who had the duty to act? What record should exist? Who was consulted? Who carries the risk? What institution can correct failure? Authoritarian breakdown asks whether coercive power is actually reduced or merely reorganized. Immediate civilian protection asks who prevents killing, forced displacement, starvation, abuse, and retaliation. Interim authority asks who governs temporarily, under what mandate, for how long, and with what limits. Institutional reconstruction asks which bodies must be rebuilt first, with what staff, financing, records, and oversight. Constitutional settlement asks how sovereignty, rights, territories, security authority, resources, and dispute resolution will be arranged. Democratic participation asks whether people can organize, deliberate, vote, criticize, and shape the new order safely. Durable order asks whether the resulting system can survive weak leaders, disagreement, elections, crisis, and changes of government. A broken outcome may begin far upstream. Visible harm may come from an unjust rule, an unfunded institution, a hidden record, a captured oversight body, or a remedy that exists only on paper. The chain prevents us from reducing system failure to one personality. It identifies where law, capacity, evidence, financing, representation, oversight, or enforcement stopped working. When citizens and professionals can locate that break, criticism becomes more accurate and reform becomes more practical. For this episode, the principal mechanism is regime replacement versus system reconstruction. The production graphic must make every link readable on a phone screen and must label verified present conditions, interim arrangements, local practices, political commitments, and proposed constitutional designs honestly. Under dictatorship, Myanmar's system change revolution is shaped by concentrated command. Information is restricted. Institutions answer upward. Force is insulated from civilian accountability. Political challenge carries personal risk. Public institutions are reorganized around obedience rather than service. In a fragile democracy, formal rules may exist while patronage, unequal capacity, corruption, politicization, military privilege, or weak enforcement make protection inconsistent. Elections may occur while constitutional vetoes remain. Civilian institutions may operate while unelected armed power retains decisive authority. Rights may exist on paper while remedies remain weak. In a functioning federal democracy, authority is constitutionally distributed, common rights remain enforceable, and more than one institution can question, review, or correct harmful power. Armed institutions remain under lawful civilian authority. Federal units exercise genuine self-government. Minority rights remain protected within every jurisdiction. Public money, public force, and public decisions remain answerable to law. No democratic design is self-executing. Institutions require capacity, integrity, resources, professional norms, records, public participation, and enforceable consequences. The viewer should compare who decides, how authority was obtained, whether records are public, whether affected people participate, and whether democratic transfer and correction exist in practice. Protection becomes durable only when Myanmar's system change revolution is converted into rules, responsibilities, records, and remedies. The minimum guardrails are these.
1.
Civilian protection and humanitarian access. Transitional decisions must prioritize life, safety, food, shelter, health care, education, displacement protection, and access for independent humanitarian assistance.
2.
Lawful and inclusive interim authority. Interim institutions need a clear mandate, define limits, representative participation, publish procedures, review mechanisms, and a credible path out of temporary power. 3. Continuity of essential services. Political transition must preserve or rapidly restore water, electricity, health, education, transport, local administration, justice, and basic economic coordination.
4.
Sequenced institution building and constitutional settlement. Elections, constitutional negotiation, security reform, administrative reconstruction, fiscal arrangements, and local governance must be sequenced so that one stage does not destroy the conditions required for the next. 5. Public participation, accountability, and durable democratic transfer. Citizens, ethnic nationalities, women, youth, displaced people, minorities, local institutions, and professional communities must have safe and meaningful ways to shape decisions, review authority, and transfer power democratically. These safeguards work as a system. Civilian protection without legitimate authority can become fragmented command. Interim authority without limits can become a new permanent elite. Essential services without public accountability can reproduce corruption. Constitutional language without institutional capacity can remain paper. Participation without safety can expose people. And a remedy without enforcement does not repair harm. Global relevance. The institutional test applies far beyond Myanmar. Across political labels, ask who decides, what limits power, what information is public, who participates, and whether real correction or remedy exists. Direct Myanmar focus. Distinguish verified present conditions from proposed transitional design. Protect civilians and sensitive identities. Represent ethnic nationalities, regional institutions, local authorities, communities, and political proposals with accuracy, dignity, and agency. Do not treat one organization, authority, armed actor, community, or constitutional proposal as the whole country. Here is the civic practice for this episode. See and ask. Ask whether the changes you hope for are merely new faces or genuinely new structures. Identify what would change in authority, force, rights, money, institutions, accountability, and correction.
Verify.
Examine current Myanmar evidence and comparative transition experience concerning institutions, authority, conflict, civilian protection, public services, and proposed arrangements. Separate verified fact, credible allegation, analysis, political commitment, and aspiration.
Act.
Compare one proposed change with a system change checklist. Examine institutions, authority, rights, public money, public force, participation, accountability, and correction. Identify one safeguard that prevents repetition and one institution responsible for enforcing it. Review. Record whether you can name the responsible institution, the evidence, the safeguard or remedy, and one safe next step. Protect victims, witnesses, family members, confidential records, and digital security before taking any outward step. This is why the story matters beyond borders. Myanmar's system change revolution is not a desire for chaos. It is a refusal to continue living inside a lie. Not only no to a regime, but no to the system that makes regime abuse repeatable. Rebuilding is not optional. It is the only path capable of stopping the cycle. A nation cannot be healed by the same machine that harmed it. The machine must be dismantled. And a new architecture must be built by the people, for the people, and for generations to come. The principle to carry forward is this. Regime change replaces office holders. System change rebuilds the rules, institutions, incentives, safeguards, and authority relationships that determine public life. Ask yourself, what part of system change in Myanmar have I treated as normal even though it should be visible, answerable, and correctable? Build a system that cannot be repeated. In the next episode, we continue with the transitional roadmap. From collapse to federal democracy. Continue the playlist, use the worksheet, and keep the practice safe, truthful, and disciplined. The system shapes our lives. Our participation shapes the system.
Subscribe.
Learn. Participate. Shape the future. KJA. Knowledge justifies authority.